Welcome back to yet another episode of the Brighter Web Podcast, giving you insights on growing a small business using the latest technology and marketing best practices. Hey, Mickey.
Hey, Robert. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Let's record a podcast episode. How about it?
Cool. Yeah, I saw you wanted to talk about Evergreen content, which sounds fantastic, but let's maybe unpack what that is. What is Evergreen content, and why would we want to talk about that?
Yeah, so kind of like an evergreen tree.
Okay.
Evergreen content stays, green all year round. It's topics and themes and content that is relevant at any point during the year or during the business cycle. It's different from like the timely content. You might talk about, hey, we've got an event coming up, or hey, this is a really what's really popular right now as of the recording of this podcast is Google Analytics 4 is coming out and ChatGPT is really big, artificial intelligence, but those things maybe aren't going to fade away, but they're going to become a little bit less popular in a year or two when somebody might listen to this podcast episode. And so talking about things like evergreen content, which is always going to be relevant, right? We can always kind of talk about that and bring that up. So those are just, they're topics and themes and pieces of content that are always forever going to be relevant to somebody, or maybe not forever, but at least for a long period of time. It's something that's going to be less timely and more long shelf life.
Okay, so why do I want that kind of content, though?
It's beneficial because, again, somebody might listen to this podcast 2 or 3 years from now. Somebody might click on your blog post 2 or 3 years from now. And if it's something that's very time related and time bound and focused on this event or this upcoming deadline or something like that, well, then they're reading it years later. They're like, wow, that doesn't really matter to me right now. It's not as, again, consistently relevant over time.
So this podcast about evergreen content is evergreen content.
Exactly.
Okay, that's brilliant.
We just got really meta.
Yeah, we
here,
did.
I think. And I think in general, we try to make these podcast episodes more relevant. Again, we've had conversations about some of the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT stuff. We've talked about Google Analytics 4, which have been our more time-bound episodes. I think they're still going to be relevant a little bit down the line, but most of our topics and themes intentionally are a lot more evergreen,
for sure,
including this episode.
Yeah. So, how would one come up with evergreen topics then? Seems like the time-bound ones are more in your face. So evergreen takes a little more work. So how do you find those sorts of topics?
Yeah, I think you think about the things that you're talking about on a consistent basis. One of the kind of easy places to go to is like the frequently asked questions for your business. What are the things your customers, your clients are often asking about? What are the things that you're constantly having to like repeat yourself over and over again of, this is why a WordPress website matters. This is why SEO is important, right? Those are the things that for us are constantly going to be evergreen topics. And so, okay, let's write about some of those things that are always going to be kind of relevant and important to our customers. You also can start kind of with a short list, right? There's going to be some things that naturally come to mind, but over time, you're going to start seeing more and more of those things. And so I think just making a list and then growing and adding to it over time is going to be really helpful. And again, these things can be in multiple different kind of purposes. They can be educational, informational things that are just going to help your business, your audience, your customers, learn things. But they can also be promotional. They can also be around your products or your services. So again, having a bunch of different purposes behind those evergreen topics is also a really good way to kind of help you think more broadly and come up with, again, a wide range of content.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So you gave some examples. What are other ideas people could think about for examples of evergreen content they could use?
Yeah. Well, your products or your services, at least the general categories, aren't really going to change, in general, right? We're going to always be talking about websites. We're going to be talking about digital marketing for us specifically.
Yep.
Your company's core values. Hopefully those things don't change all that drastically. Hopefully you're consistently sticking with those things like your mission statement and what your values are. Your company history, again, your company history might change and grow and develop over time, but in general, like you were still founded about the same time and for the same reason, right?
Right.
So that's another big one. Partner organizations, giving shout outs to your vendors or your strategic partners who you work with. Again, those are things that might slightly change over time, but hopefully you've got, some consistent partnerships that you can regularly talk about. Cross-promoting your marketing channels. So, oftentimes we'll do evergreen content for social media. And so, hey, for social media, we can talk about our other social media channels. Or, on Facebook, we can talk about our LinkedIn channel. We can also talk about, hey, go read our blog, go listen to this podcast, go download one of our free resources, go sign up for our e-newsletter, like all those different kind of other marketing channels you can cross promote them and talk about those things, because hopefully a year or two from now, you're still going to have a blog and a podcast and a newsletter, all those things that you've kind of started up. So anything that's going to kind of still be relevant and in existence down the line is really good. And then last kind of example there is any kind of call to action that's going to be consistent. So, hey, schedule a free demo with us, or hey, why don't you donate to our cause, or hey, why don't you volunteer for an upcoming mission, or any of those kind of things that are consistently going to be calls to action that are going to be relevant for your business or your organization. Those are things that, again, you can regularly pepper in with Evergreen content.
Gotcha. So those are some good uses. I think you mentioned a few. Any other places you could use this Evergreen content once you have this great list of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, social media is a big one, especially because social media never ends. You're always having to constantly post stuff. So just more ideas and more content is really helpful to have kind of in your back pocket.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the blog is obviously a good one. A blog post is going to kind of remain there. You don't want to repost a blog post as often as you would post something to social media, but there could be a slightly different angle that you talk about this topic, right? Again, SEO, maybe for example, like, we post every 6 months something new about SEO, right? It's a kind of common bucket that we're talking about on a regular basis. Again, if you have a newsletter that you're pushing out on a regular basis, like, okay, making sure that we're at least constantly talking about one of our core values in our newsletter. We're constantly featuring or highlighting one of our strategic partners at some point in the newsletter, right? Having a rotating basis of where you're putting something in there. So basically, any of your marketing channels, you've got maybe some place on there that's got a place for Evergreen content to land.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's one of those things I struggle with a little bit because I never want to repeat myself in my blog or social media or anywhere, but you really can. Not too often, but people don't remember that I wrote a certain topic 18 months ago, and I feel bad sort of repeating myself, but it's okay because you need to say the same things over and over a bit to a point. I mean, certainly we've seen companies that go too far with that, but repeating yourself a little bit periodically is a good thing to reinforce those core values, reinforce those products, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the big takeaway from this episode is it's okay to repeat yourself, especially if it's these topics that are important. Maybe you don't say it, again, every single day. You're not talking about the same service or the same core value, but you have it at a regular enough cadence, realizing that, hey, probably only about 10% of our audience heard it the first time, so maybe we'll hit a different 10% of the audience this time. Or maybe one person will hear it again and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. That is that's a core value of this company. Like it helps reinforce that message. So yeah, don't be afraid to talk about the important things on a regular basis consistently, because if it's that important, then it bears repeating.
Yep. So here we're recording this in mid-2023, but if you're hearing this in 2025, it's because we just ran it again because it's great content to reuse.
There you go. Yeah, it's okay sometimes to redrop that same thing, or even sometimes with a blog post. Again, I mentioned you're not going to write the same topic for a blog again because you can go back and find the old published post. But you can sometimes refresh it, right? You can sometimes update that Evergreen copy and say, hey, this was kind of more timely at the moment, but it's still a relevant topic. Let me just kind of refresh. Maybe you're trimming the tree, I guess,
right.
to use that metaphor again. You're trimming the Evergreen tree for your content.
Yep.
I got lost a little bit in the metaphor there.
It's all good. I got you.
So if you have been, thank you for listening to this episode of the Brighter Web Podcast, brought to you by Green Melon, a digital marketing agency. To help your business keep up with the latest digital marketing trends, check us out at greenmelon.com. You can also find show notes and more episodes at abrighterweb.com.